796 by Senator McPherson relative to state debt. Provide that certain debt secured by statewide tax revenues or special assessments be excluded from the definition of net state tax supported debt.
Representative Hazel on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is Senate Bill 796, and it seeks to remove debt approved by voters from the calculation of the net state tax supported debt, which is associated with the time projects. And I'd be willing to, I'd ask for a favorable passage. I'd be willing to answer any questions.
Mr. Guillory in the chair. What do I touch? Ms. Peterson for a question.
Representative Hazel, why would we want to not include debt just because it was approved by the people? Why would we not want to include that in the state, the limit? Is that what it does?
It's my understanding, Madam Speaker Pro Tem, that what it would do, this is only dedicated debt, and it's my appreciation that this would go to the 4% tax on fuel, and that the reason why I think Senator McPherson has brought this, because that this is a recognizable and a steady stream at the 4%, that this is incoming, and that I think that he would believe that this would give us a better a bond rating that for the people, not the bond commissioner, but the people that sell bonds, yes, and say in New York or so.
Yeah, but I still don't understand why we're doing it to improve our bond rating? Is that what the suggestion is?
I think the rationale is, that would be my appreciation, and
it's not my appreciation. You mind returning this to the calendar for a little while?
Fabulous job I did.
All right, thank you, Representative Hazel.
Mr. Speaker, for the floor.
No, of course not. No, of course not. No, not at all.
Members, Representative Hazel is being a good soldier here for his senator, but this bill is a very bad bill. What it does is it changes the way we calculate net tax supported debt and eliminates basically the transportation trust fund debt from the definition of net tax supported debt, because it was a bill and a constitutional amendment that created a new tax that was voted on by the voters to support road construction. Now, the time program is one of the best things we've done, and particularly under the last administration, and particularly Transportation Secretary Bradbury, we accelerated the time program by bonding it extensively as opposed to going on a pay-as-you-go basis. And the reason we did that was because the cost of funds on the bonds was significantly less than the construction inflation rate associated with those projects. So every year we were not doing the construction, we were falling behind in the cost. And by bonding it out, it allowed us to lock down contracts and move forward much faster. On all the major projects that has been accomplished, the one I'm most familiar with is the Huey P. Long Bridge, and it pushed the completion of the Huey P. Long Bridge forward by almost 20 years, significantly impacting the project's cost. So the reason this is a bad bill is because it would take all of the transportation trust fund debt and any other debt subsequently issued that was voted on by the people of the state out of the calculation. That is not good budgetary or fiscal policy. And quite frankly, we may not calculate it internally here if this were to pass and to pass by the people. But the rating agencies are going to count, I guarantee you they're going to count the Transportation Trust Fund as net tax supported debt. They count annual appropriation debt as net tax supported debt, let alone something that's been bonded and from a revenue stream of gasoline taxes. So I would urge you to vote against this bill. It is very bad debt policy, and quite frankly, will not achieve what I think Senator McPherson wants it to achieve, simply because the rating agencies will not recognize the fact that we don't think it's net tax supported debt. They're the ones who decide who net tax supported debt is, and gasoline secured bonds are considered net tax supported debt. And Mr. Acting Speaker, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Ms. Peterson for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know what I'm curious about, Mr. Speaker, is that this is a bill that's come a long way in the process, and I haven't gotten what color are they this week? Yellow, blue, pink, the notes from the administration.
I've only seen yellow notes, Ms.
Oh, yellow.
Carter. I don't know.
Well, I've not gotten one of those yellow notes like Mr. Hazel's pants there. I haven't got one of those on my desk, and I'm just curious. I mean, how would this fit into the goals of the administration of?
Oh, I'm sure, Ms. Peterson, this one was just got by. You know, there's a lot going on, and they always have the ability to veto things, but I think that,
but what would it do with regard to spending? Would it permit for more spending if this wasn't included in the debt?
No, absolutely not, because the rating agencies are going to include it in our calculations, and it's
anyway.
Superfluous, right?
Right, they would include it anyway.
That's exactly right.
I'm glad you caught it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Gwynn for a question.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. Mr. Tucker, this right here, if this were to pass through, this could do more damage to the state than it could do good with the bond rating commissions. If this were to be included on a financial statement where, you know, we have to be careful doing this kind of stuff. We shouldn't do it at all, because it's not reality of what it is. A debt is a debt, and you can't hide from it.
That's correct, Mr. Gwynn. Net tax supported debt is net tax supported debt. The Transportation Trust Fund is a state debt supported by a gasoline tax levied by the state. So how you get around that, you can't. And so I think the rating agencies would then look at us dimly, because we would appear to trying to get around what is pretty common practice.
Right, yeah, well, that would hurt you more than it could help you.
It sure could.
To me, did you know, in the long run, maneuvers like this is what makes our bond rating more expensive.
That's correct. And Mr. Gwynn, on that, I'd like just take 2 seconds here and say, with what the legislature has done and the administration has done in the budget this year by eliminating one-time revenues funding recurring expenditures, that is a major consideration of the bond rating houses. And with us eliminating that, I think we would be eligible for an upgrade in our bond rating, because our budget picture looks so significantly better based on what the legislature and the administration has done. But if we did something like this, I think it'd be a step backwards.
Well, this was beneficial to the taxpayers of the state of Louisiana, because all the work that was done under the time projects were done at a substantially less cost.
That's right.
And our people are a lot better off for doing that. So that debt does have to be acknowledged, but as far as the money's worth, was a good investment.
That's correct, Ms. Gwynn. And you've never heard me and the members who were here last year, I disagreed oftentimes with the Blanco administration on different policies, but they were absolutely correct on bonding out the time program. Because as I said earlier, our cost of funds was less than construction interest and inflation, and we came out way ahead on that.
Oh, it was a good thing. We got about 30% more work, probably.
I bet you I wouldn't doubt that for a minute. Thank you.
Mr. Downs for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just for the benefit of the House, when you speak not only as speaker here, but actually you have some experience in dealing in the bond world, don't you?
That's correct, Mr. Downs. As you know, I did public finance investment banking before I got into real estate development. And I was actually one of the bankers, junior banker at the time, but was a banker on the Transportation Trust Fund issue for the firm I worked for at the time. So I'm very familiar with TTF and its benefits to the state.
Speaking from that experience, and actually, if we try to, for whatever the reason, and I know the senator's intentions are good, what he's trying to accomplish, but actually, this could have a very negative impact on our reputation in the bond world. Something I think we spent quite some time earlier this year trying to enhance our reputation, and this is the thing we used to be accused of and being guilty of that we can't afford to return to.
That's true, and Representative Downs, I happened to see a Moody's report this weekend as I was going through my reading stack, and Louisiana, I believe, is still ranked, even with our 6% of total revenue limitation on debt service. I think we're still ranked in the top 20 states for debt per capita and debt issuance in total dollars and that kind of thing. So it's not like we have a real low debt per capita number. Ours is in the top quartile probably of the country, or certainly the top half. And what I think Senator McPherson was attempting to do was to create capacity under our own internal self-imposed restriction. Right. But it won't do any good, because when we go to the bond houses, they're still going to use their own calculation. They're not going to buy our calculation. And so I think this is a flawed piece of legislation.
Okay. We do need to find some solutions, because we do need to do some things in the road area that are going to require more and some issues. But this is just simply not the way to get there.
No, and Mr. Downs, I think we did hit on the solution in the second special session by applying cash to projects. And I believe if we're fortunate enough to have another surplus for next year, which I believe we will have, I think it'll be incumbent upon the administration and the legislature to apply as much of that cash as possible to capital outlay projects, if that's where we get our biggest return on investment.
Unless Representative Fanning has some kind of a major mental change in the next 10 days, that surplus is almost guaranteed, isn't it?
Well, we've all been concerned about Representative Fanning's mental change over the last 10 days here, but he's been under a lot of pressure, but I think he'll hold up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
There are no further questions. The gentleman has a right to close. Mr. Hazel.
Members, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this would not create any new debt, and it doesn't authorize any debt, and I'd ask for favorable passage. Thank you.
Mr. Hazel moves final passage of the bill. As many of you favor the final passage will vote yes. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will open the machine. Trahan, no. Mr. Arms, no. Mr. Leger, no. Mr. Aubert, no. Mr. Leger, no. Are you through voting? Mr. Simon, no. Are you through voting? Close the machines. 3 yeas, 84 nays. The bills failed to pass. Representative Tucker moves to reconsider the vote by which this bill finally passed and lay that motion, failed to pass, and lay that motion on the table.